Before automobiles and airplanes, trains offered unmatched reliability, speed, and elegance. And the New York Central Railroad was the pride of an industrial age. Stretching from the heart of Manhattan to the edge of Lake Erie and beyond, its shining tracks carried milk from farms, coal from hills, and people on the adventure of their lives. Grand Central Terminal stood as a crown jewel, pulsing with constant motion. From city skylines to quiet valleys, its influence reached virtually everywhere in the Empire State. And countless towns hummed with the rhythm of arrival and departure. And when you put it all together, it formed one of the largest networks in American history. The New York Central Railroad. Where do you even begin with something like this? It was one of America's greatest railroads, running from 1853 to 1968. Trains rolled between New York City, Chicago, and hundreds of towns in between. But that kind of reach didn't happen overnight. It all began with the first tracks in America, some of which were in New York State. In the early days, transportation in New York meant paddling rivers and hauling boats across muddy trails. Haudenosaunee natives followed paths like the Oneida Carry, which was a vital portage route between the Mohawk River and Wood Creek. By the late 1700s, those same paths grew into rough wagon roads, including the Great Genesee Road that stretched west from Utica. Inventive minds soon turned from roads to canals, seeking smoother and cheaper routes for commerce. Early canal projects, like one in Little Falls, paved the way for the massive Erie Canal, a waterway that turned New York into the Empire State. As canal travel flourished, new ideas emerged for even faster connections, and in 1826, the Mohawk and Hudson Railroad was chartered to link Albany and Schenectady. It became one of the first rail lines in the nation and the first permanent one built in New York State. Engineer John Jervis soon took charge, designing the famous DeWitt Clinton locomotive that marked a new era of travel. The success of the Erie Canal encouraged a network of side canals, and railroads would rise alongside them, ready to move even faster. The New York and Harlem Railroad linked Lower Manhattan to Harlem, and the expansion of rail lines changed how people moved, boosting connections between towns and regions. Not everyone was happy, however. Some resisted, worried about competition with canals and changes to settlements. Despite opposition, the 1830s and 40s saw a surge of railroads connecting towns and opening new routes across New York. And here's an interesting tidbit. The concept of the caboose possibly began on the Auburn and Syracuse Railroad, where a boxcar served as a rolling office for the conductor. By the mid-1800s, trains were running to Rome and Buffalo, connecting key cities, but still operating separately. The network was fragmented, with each line running independently and often out of sync. It was obvious that these separate tracks needed unification, setting the stage for a transformation that would reshape travel. In 1853, under the leadership of Erastus Corning, 10 independent railroads were combined to form the New York Central Railroad, spanning from Albany to Buffalo. And not long after that, a man named Cornelius Vanderbilt entered the railroad business, gradually acquiring control of major lines and extending his influence across the state. His consolidation of the New York Central and Hudson River Railroads created a unified route along the Hudson and Mohawk valleys, part of what would later be called the Water Level Route. The railroad expanded quickly, and New York City's law restricting steam trains below 42nd Street led to the construction of a Grand Central Depot at that location. At the time, it was in the sticks, and people mocked the idea of putting something so far from the city. Oh, how things would change. Expansion continued as the New York Central acquired Western lines, improving travel and freight efficiency. Even canal toll reductions could not match the speed and year-round service of the growing rail network. By the 1880s, the railroad provided a continuous route from New York City to Chicago, solidifying its status as a major national system. A trip from Manhattan to Rochester took about 12 hours, and Chicago was a 33.5-hour journey, very impressive for the time. During its heyday, the New York Central carried massive amounts of freight and supported expanding factories across New York and the Midwest. Cargo included steel, coal, and canned foods, with notable shipments from Olney and Floyd factories. The Mohawk and Malone line connected the Adirondacks, and the Empire State Express blew people's minds with rapid transit. One locomotive even famously went over 100 miles an hour. But who knows how accurate that reading was. Anyway, by the early 1900s, New York City had more suburbs within a 25-mile radius than any other city in the country. Thanks, of course, to the rail empire. Meanwhile, Union Station in Albany became a hub for passengers, and at North Creek Station, Vice President Theodore Roosevelt discovered he was going to become president, prompting an urgent ride to Buffalo to take the oath of office. During this period, the 20th Century Limited luxury train dazzled passengers with speed, elegance, and red carpet service. A fierce rivalry with the Pennsylvania Railroad defined the era, marked by the 1910 debut of Penn Station in Manhattan. The New York Central followed with the Grand Central Terminal in 1913, which was an electrified Beaux-Arts masterpiece that set new standards for design and efficiency. Outside of New York City, stations like Yonkers, Utica Union, and Rhinecliff extended the rail system, bringing Grand Central's reach deep into the state. In 1914, the network underwent full consolidation, combining the New York Central and Hudson River with the Lake Shore and Michigan Southern lines. With the railroad stretching across 11 states, it was a golden age. But all good things must come to an end. The convenience and freedom of automobiles would soon eclipse rail travel, signaling a new chapter in transportation. As automobiles were on the rise, railroads and canals faced declining traffic, and even things like the newly completed barge canal could not reverse the trend. Even so, the railroad would still play an important role during World War II by transporting soldiers and wartime supplies across the country. After the war, the New York Central attempted modernization and streamlined operations to remain competitive. However, the construction of the interstate highway system and growing airline travel drew passengers and cargo away, marking the start of a steady decline. Facing severe financial strain, it merged with its rival, the Pennsylvania Railroad, forming the Penn Central Transportation Company in 1968. Shortly after, financial and operational chaos led to bankruptcy, the largest in U.S. history at the time. By the late 1970s and into the 21st century, Conrail took over the viable lines, and commuter services like Metro North preserved parts of the original routes. The New York Central Railroad defined a century of rail travel and regional development. Its pioneering routes and efficient operations set standards that persist to this day. Many original tracks still handle cargo, passenger, and commuter traffic, proving lasting relevance. And speaking of which, Grand Central Terminal is still going strong. And to me, it's still very much a crown jewel. Have a good one.